بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And welcome to this new episode of Ask Zad, coming to you from studios of Zad in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Our first question for today is from Benazir. She says, can you please give some pointers on how to memorize the Quran in an efficient way? Benazir, the Quran is the word of Allah Azza wa Jal. Allah mentioned in a number of different ayahs in Surah Al-Qamar, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ, that Allah Azza wa Jal has made it easy for people to memorize and to contemplate on and to understand. So it is easy. To my knowledge, there is no other religion that the followers of such a religion could come forward and say, we memorized our Holy Scripture by heart. I don't know of any person on earth who memorizes the whole Bible, Old and New Testament, word for word, page for page. Let alone that none of them can prove or show us that their scripture is the same that was revealed to their messenger or prophet. So even the Christians cannot come and say, this is our Bible. Because I would say, which Bible do you mean? The Douay Version or King James Version or the Revised Standard Version or. Each church has its own version, which is not possible, and they're not able to bring us the original copy. So from Aramaic to Hebrew to Latin to English, can I see and cross-examine? Said, no, sorry, this is all what we have today. All other religions are the same fashion, except Quran. This book was revealed 15 centuries ago, almost 1440 years ago. And it's still intact. Not a single letter has been altered or changed. It is in the same language that more than 300 or 400 million people speak today. So you go to Morocco, you go to Jordan, you go to the Gulf, and you ask them about the Quran, and you open it to them, they read it, they understand it. And not only that, if you were to burn all the copies on earth, more than 50 million Hafiz, Qaris would come and write another copy identical to those that were burned. Not a single letter changed, because Allah preserved it in the chests of men. This great Quran, memorizing it varies from one person to the other. It's not one size that fits all. The way I memorize it may differ from the way that this person memorizes it or that. Some people like to memorize the Quran before Fajr Adhan. So they stand up for prayer, for night prayer, tahajjud, and then they spend some time to recite it and read it and memorize it. Others prefer to do that after Fajr time. There are those who prefer to do it after Asr, and those who prefer to do it after Maghrib, and those who prefer to do it at night time. So people differ. There are people who master memorizing the Quran through repetition. So the first ayah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, they repeat it 100 times. Others memorize it by writing it. And this was the old way of known as Al-Kuttab, where the teacher sits among the students and the students have a small board and they write one ayah. They memorize it and they erase it. And they do this on and on and on until it is fixed in their heads. And this is one of the good ways, because usually writing is far better than repetition. The most important thing in memorizing the Quran is revising it. I know brothers and I know sisters who on daily basis memorize 1 page of the Quran. And this is very efficient. And they finish the Quran like in a year and a half, or maybe 2 years. They finished memorizing the whole Quran. But the quality of their memorization, the efficiency of their memorization is like 2%. I can memorize the face or 1 page of the Quran in less than 4 or 5 minutes, because people often either know it by heart or they have read it so many times that it can be easily read. But you come the following week and ask me about it to read it out of memory, I can't. I have to give me a couple of minutes and revise it, and I can do that. So memorizing it is not an issue. Maintaining it, preserving it is an issue, because it quickly disappears. You easily forget ayahs that you do not revise regularly. I know people, normal people, who memorize the Quran, but they revise 1 juz' every single day. So every month, out of memory, they revise the Quran. And they keep on doing this every single month. I know a personal friend who revises 2 juz' every day. So every 15 days, he revised the Quran out of memory. So he does this twice a month. And I know a relative of mine who revises 5 juz', which means every 6 days, she revises the Quran, and she goes on and on and on. And don't ask about the quality of her memorization. It is almost perfect. Any ayah you recite, she says, nope, this is wrong. The correct is this. Why? Because she just revised it less than 6 days ago. And she calls her siblings, she calls her relatives, her mahrams. Every day 5 juz'. You need someone to hold the Quran and follow up and correct you. And this takes hours. But don't ask about the reward. So each one's effort is different to the other, and I hope this answers your question. Mu'izz says, regarding a hadith in which is said of Allah descending to the lowest heaven when 1/3 of the night remains, I'm a little confused about it. The time when 1/3 of the night remains varies from one place to the other. Does Allah descend to the lowest heaven multiple times? Because time varies in different parts of the world. Mu'izz, your question is quite disturbing. The reason is that you are comparing Allah Azza wa Jal to us humans. The hadith is authentic without any doubt. Allah Azza wa Jal descends to the lower heaven when the last third of the night is due. And Allah says, is there anyone seeking forgiveness so I would forgive him? Is there anyone asking me so that I would give him? Is there anyone supplicating to me so that I would answer him? This is authentic, there's no doubt in that. But the problem is that you're comparing Allah's descent to ours. And this is unacceptable, because Allah says, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ. There is nothing like Him. And He is the most hearing and seeing. He is the all hearing and seeing, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now, if you look at Allah's attributes, you would acknowledge that Allah is all hearing, all seeing, powerful, knowledgeable, merciful. He's the provider. He is the giver of death and life. Now, when we look at one of His attributes, or any of His attributes, does anyone on earth believe that Allah's attributes are like ours? Allah stated in the Quran, nothing is unlike to Him. Nothing is like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or similar to Allah Azza wa Jal. So we all know this. Let's look at the attribute of hearing. As a human being, we hear and we listen. If there are 4 people talking in front of me and they're speaking the same language and they're addressing me with their problems, would I be able to comprehend all of them at the same time? Definitely not. At best, I may pick few words here or there from 2 of them and be able to figure out their problems. But all 4? Impossible. Is Allah's hearing like us? So can someone come and ask like you, Mu'izz, and says, how? I'm a bit confused. When we know that there are 7 billion inhabitants of the human being, of the human race on earth at the moment, and they speak in thousands of languages and dialects, and they speak at the same time. And Allah hears each and every one of them and records all what they say. Allah Azza wa Jal even knows what goes into their minds without them speaking it. Not only that, Allah hears and knows what animals in their billions talk about, what birds, what fish, what insects, what any living creature on earth is saying or doing or thinking of. Are you a bit confused? Definitely not. You said, yeah, okay, this is Allah Azza wa Jal. He is capable of that and more. Okay, why were you not confused? Because you acknowledged that Allah's attribute of hearing is not like ours. Likewise with knowledge, likewise with power, strength, and ability. Now, why did you not use the same method when it came to the attribute of descent? Why didn't you say to yourself, Allah's descent to the lower heaven is not like us? Allah Azza wa Jal is nothing similar to what we can comprehend and think of. Because if you do that, then you will be safe. And your iman will be intact. You've got the full conviction and belief that Allah descends when the last third of the night is, full stop, without saying, how, show me. You can't do that. Likewise, in the hadith, I think of Abu Sa'id Al-Khudri, or Abu Dharr, I forgot, where the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, when the sun sets, it prostrates in front of the throne of Allah Azza wa Jal until Allah tells it to rise again. But we know that the sun sets every single moment around the globe. So how is this possible? Do you see the sun itself? Do you know the universe, how it is run? We don't know, but we believe. It is not something that you apply your logic to. This is something that logic has nothing to do with. It has to do with belief. Harun al-Rashid, one of the great caliphs of the Abbasi period, he had a son. And this son used to give form to the attributes of Allah. I seek refuge in Allah. So he used to say, Allah's hands is like this, Allah has fingers like that, and he simulates Allah's attributes to ours. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. تعالى الله عما يقول الظالمون علوا عظيما. Imam Shafi'i heard of this. And this is the son of the ruler. He could behead him in any second, like all tyrant rulers. But Harun al-Rashid was not like that. So he went to him and said to him in a logical way, my son, have you heard of the hadith when the revelation was first given to the Prophet ﷺ? And the boy said, yes, I did. He said, did you hear how the Archangel Jibril descended on his throne and the Prophet ﷺ saw him with 600 wings, with pearls, with rubies, with emeralds and precious stones falling from his 600 wings? And the boy said, yes, I've heard this. So Imam Shafi'i said to him, leave Jibreel alone and his 600 wings. I give you a bird and I ask you to place 3 wings on that bird. Can you do that? So the guy started to think, said, yeah, okay, one on the right, one on the left. The third wing, should it be on top or on the bottom or in the front or in the back? It doesn't fit. So he could not answer. So Imam Shafi'i said, my son, a bird with 3 wings and you're unable to think and imagine. What about 600 wings of the Archangel Jibreel? Let alone Allah, the Almighty, the Creator of the heavens and the earth. This is something way beyond your paycheck, way beyond your league. Allah Azza wa Jal, we do not contemplate or think or try to give form to His beautiful attributes. We believe as they are. We believe in the face of Allah Azza wa Jal. We believe in the hands of Allah Azza wa Jal, as mentioned in the Quran, but without crossing the line or trying to figure out or imagine how this is possible, and Allah knows best. An anonymous questioner says, what's the concept of voting in Islam? How to choose if all the candidates are non-Muslims, or one is a Muslim and he's corrupt, but his opponent is a non-Muslim but fair? First of all, democracy is un-Islamic. So you have to believe and understand this. The concept of democracy, the concept of voting is totally un-Islamic. It is against the religion of Islam to have a parliament session where they want to cast a ballot or a vote over the consumption of intoxicants, or opening brothels and whorehouses, prostitution, or on the permissibility of usury, or teaching homosexuality. This is democracy, whatever the people want. Subhanallah. This is totally against Islam. In a funny clip I saw in an Arab country claiming to be Muslim, that they are voting on selling wine and intoxicants in the country. So they're giving their votes, and then the head of the parliament says, we will adjourn this session because now it's time for Adhan al-Asr, and we will convene afterwards. What Adhan and what Asr are you guys talking about? You're totally going against the religion of Allah. Allah tells you that intoxicants are prohibited, so avoid it. May you prosper. And you say, we'll we'll see what the people want. If you see what the people want that goes against what Allah wants, this is blasphemous. So the concept of democracy and voting in general is not accepted. And why do I say in general? Because sometimes it can be accepted as forms of shura, of consulting others, which is not binding, but we take their decision and consider it. For example, in my family, I'll gather the children, hypothetically that is, and ask them, I want to buy a new car. I have this car and I have this station wagon. Which one do you think is best? And they give their votes and I tell them, okay, I'll go with the majority. There's no problem in that. This is not voting on an issue that concerns the whole ummah or that is related to religion in selecting who leads the country. Because this is related to religion. It's not for the general masses to choose. Sometimes they vote for an actor. They vote for a prostitute. A member of the parliament was voted and she was a porn star. What is this? So, well, this is what the masses want. So if the masses come tomorrow and say, we would like to legitimize incest, a man can marry his wife, his daughter, or his sister, and the people say there's nothing wrong in that. This is blasphemous. When they channel and legalize same-sex marriages, or LGBT, or homosexuality, and they enforce people to learn it at school, this is blasphemous, because they are challenging the law of Allah. They're challenging Sharia. And for Muslims, this takes you out of the fold of Islam. But, as I stated, that democracy is out of the question. If I live in a country, unfortunately, that believes in democracy, and they're calling people to vote, and when we look at the candidates, we find that there is a corrupt disbeliever and a Muslim who is trying to do good. I know that this process is wrong, but if I don't put my weight behind the Muslim candidate, and if all Muslims stay back and refrain from voting, the corrupt disbeliever would win. In this case, to ward off the worst of the two evils, I have to vote. Not that I believe in the system, but rather just to minimize the damage. And likewise, if I have a corrupt Muslim, he's a Muslim, but he's corrupt. Like some of the leaders in Muslim countries who claim to be Muslim, yet he goes to Hindu temples, he goes to the Buddhist temples, he wears like them, he dances like them, he acts like them, and he says that this is part of the job description. A'udhu billah. He's corrupt. And I have a non-Muslim who is well known, his track record is being fair, being honest, being clean, and he would do well for the country. Definitely, I would tell you, vote for the non-Muslim, because this corrupt Muslim would only deteriorate Islam in our country. We have a short break. Stay tuned, and inshallah, we'll be right back.
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today I'm going to talk about the book Interactions of the Greatest Leader. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminded us through his guidance and example that Islam is complete submission to the will of Allah. For one who submits, a mere declaration or display of belief will not be taken for success, but his or her heart and soul will certainly be put to test. Allah tested the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam severely in order that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam becomes an example for his companions to follow. Similarly, he tests the believer to see whether he lives a righteous life in accordance with the instructions and commands set by Allah, or lives according to what his desires dictate. Whether the faith he displays is firmly rooted in his heart, or is it merely on the surface. He will be tested to see whether he will continue to have faith and love of Allah when in a calamity, as he does when in comfort, whether he will continue to remember and worship him if given bounties and comforts of life, as he does when he lives a modest life. Allah will undoubtedly test him to see if his faith, trust and love of him is unconditional, or is it conditioned upon good health and a comfortable life, free from stress and anxiety. The Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam showed us through his own example that for a righteous Muslim, this life is a testing ground where he will continue to be tested until he meets Allah. For him, tests will be conducted on earth while he lives, and not after he dies. He knows that as soon as death arrives and he steps into the next world, his tests are over. There, he only receives the result of his tests and enjoys the fruits of the deeds that he committed during a short span of time called life.
Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah and welcome back. Shifa says, my father uses interest money from the bank for household expenses and he works in an insurance company and his salary is haram. Does this affect us? And what about the others who are invited to our house for meals and feasts and the gifts he gives us and them with this haram money? First of all, we have to understand that the income one gets from haram sources is divided into two types. Haram by itself and haram for the way it is earned. What do you mean, Sheikh? If I take this mug and I steal it from someone, this mug, after stealing it, is not mine for sure. And if I give it to you, it's not yours for sure, because this belongs to another person. So it is haram because of itself, not because of anything else. And such wealth cannot be used or utilized or accepted. If a person is a burglar, he's a thief, and he steals people's money, the money is belonging to others. Even if he gives it to me as a gift, the gift is haram. Once I know, I have to dispose of it or give it to the lawful owner or give it in the cause of Allah Azza wa Jal, but not to utilize it because it is stolen. So a lot of the people say, Sheikh, people bring us stolen goods. Can we buy them? It's cheap, it's good. So the answer is no. I remember once, ages ago, I was in Miami, Florida, and I was coming out of the bank and this brother comes to me. He says, listen, you want to buy some expensive watches? And he shows me a list, a collection of watches. And it's original, I can tell. Rolexes, etc. And he's selling it cheap. But I'm sure and definite that this is stolen. I cannot buy it. Buying it is haram for me. Then there is the second type of income, haram income, which is haram due to its earning. So if a person sells drugs or intoxicants or cigarettes or movies or indecent magazines, if a person works in an insurance company or in a financial institution that deals with riba, such as banks or credit cards, if a person works in the media and he produces movies, etc., all of this is haram. His income is haram. The money he makes is haram for him to utilize. But if he gives it to someone else, such as his wife, his children, if he gives gifts, if he cooks food and people eat from it, the sin is on him, but it is permissible for me to benefit from that. So the actual wealth and money that he had gained is haram for him, but the actual money is not haram itself, like the stolen goods. So if he stole a watch and he sold it and he cashed $1,000, these $1,000 are haram by themselves. The watch is haram by itself. But in the haram income that is haram due to the way it was earned, this is a different story. Therefore, whatever he gives to you, your father, as provision, as school fees, as clothes, as food, presents, it's all legit for you, and the sin is on him. You reap the benefits, and he will also be punished for it in his grave and on the day of judgment. May Allah Azza wa Jal protect us all. Rayhana says, does Islam allow women to educate themselves to achieve their ambitions, like becoming a doctor, archaeologists, scientists, etc., or her place only is in her house? Well, actually, both are valid, meaning that nothing in Islam prevents a woman from pursuing her studies. She could be a doctor, she could be an engineer, she could be an accountant, she could be anything that she wants to be, providing that the Islamic guidelines are followed. What do you mean? Well, first of all, we know that women are not supposed to study in mixed places. They're not supposed to work in mixed places, because in the salat, the Prophet told us ﷺ, that the worst rows of men are the last, and the worst rows of women are the first. So even in prayer, in the masjid, in the house of Allah, house of worship, they have to be segregated. And the further they are from one another is the best in their reward. So how would you classify studying in a mixed environment and working in a mixed environment, staying with a non-mahram for 8 hours, and maybe chit-chatting, maybe taking off the hijab, maybe flirting, maybe praising one another? Of course, this is un-Islamic. But sometimes, if a woman is abiding by the hijab, staying away from other students, studying what is essential for the ummah, such as medicine, we need medical doctors, especially female doctors, to treat our women, our wives and sisters and mothers. If she abides by these conditions, then this is halal and permissible. However, staying at home is also something that Islam recommends. As Allah mentioned in chapter 33, verse 33, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ, remain in your homes, because this is best for the whole community. When a woman stays home, takes care of her family, of her children, of her husband, of her parents, whatever she is supposed to take care of, rather than going out 8 to 10 hours, mixing with men, and neglecting her duties. Who will take care of the children in the house? The maid. And the maid will take care of the husband. And then we know what happens afterwards. This imbalance causes a lot of chaos and disturbance in the community. And this is why there's nothing wrong in a woman studying to achieve her goals, providing that her goals do not go against the Islamic teachings. A woman says, I'd like to be a civil engineer. Sister, if you become a civil engineer, this means that you have to go to projects and you have to work on site. No hijab can help you do that. You have to communicate with laborers, you have to communicate with men and order them and shout at them. And this is totally against Islam. She says, I want to become a judge. You cannot become a judge and talk to men and meet with men and sometimes be in seclusion with men. This defies the purpose of hijab. But yes, becoming anything else that is within the boundaries of Islam for a woman to work, there is nothing wrong in that, inshaAllah. Banu says, is there any significance in people claiming that they found Allah's name written on a bread that they baked or on an apple or a vegetable, or see it on any structure like a rock or a fish, etc.? How do we explain to such people about it? First of all, there is no significance, none whatsoever of this at all. This is a test from Allah Azza wa Jal. And it also can be part of the whispers of shaitan. Now, people say, this is a miracle. A child was born with the name of Allah Azza wa Jal on his arm. I opened or split an apple into two halves, and in one of the half I found Muhammad Rasulullah. A photographer took a photo of an orchard or a garden, and the trees, you can see clearly, La ilaha illallah. So this is a sign. Muslims don't need this. It was never displayed at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, where he went and said, look guys, it's written Allah, or it's written Muhammad, or whatever, because it has no significance. What has importance in our lives is the Quran, is the Sunnah. And that is it. Imagine, to those who claim that this has significance and importance and that this is a miracle, imagine if a Christian opened a watermelon and it was engraved in it, Jesus, the Son of God. What will you say then? Oh, this is from shaitan. Why is this from shaitan and this is from Ar-Rahman? You can't cherry pick like this. So we say the same thing. This has no significance. It's from shaitan, he's messing up with you. Likewise here, it's from shaitan, he's messing up with you. If you see a rock with a rock formation or even a mountain, and you see that there is the name of Allah engraved on it, or in a way the wind made it look like this, this has no significance in Islam at all. As Muslims, as believers, we don't pay any attention to that. And I would advise you to do the same. Sumayya says, it's said that reading Surah Al-Mulk every night protects a person from the torment of the grave. How true is it? What is the best time to recite it? This is authentic, Sumayya. The hadith, the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wasalam, I know a chapter of the Quran, 30 ayahs, that prevented the one who keeps it in his chest from being burnt by the fire. And we were told that it is the preventer, the surah, the preventer of the torment of the grave. And it is proven through the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ that he used to recite it every single night before going to bed. So the best time to recite it is when you are preparing to sleep, when you're sitting on your bed, or when you're lying down, you recite Surah Al-Mulk until you finish it. This is the way of the Prophet ﷺ. Some people are too lazy and they say we recite it in Isha prayer, but then we sleep after 4 or 5 hours. Some scholars say that this does the job, but I believe that it is not that sufficient, because the Sunnah and the way of the Prophet ﷺ, that he used to recite it as he was preparing to go to bed. Romana says, is it permissible for a menstruating woman to enter the masjid? What if her Quran classes are conducted in the masjid building? This is an issue of dispute among scholars. The most authentic opinion is that it is prohibited for a woman in her menses to enter a masjid. And the evidence is that the Prophet ﷺ was once in the masjid, and we know that the Prophet's house was adjacent to the masjid. Only a door separated them apart. So the Prophet ordered Mother Aisha to hand him a towel. He was in the masjid, she was in her home. She said, "O Prophet of Allah, I cannot. I am in my menses." She was menstruating. So the Prophet answered her with an answer that any layman could understand. He said to her, "I know that you are in your menses, but your menses is not in your hand." Meaning that when you are handing it to me through the door, when your hand enters the masjid, there's nothing prohibited in that. Rather, if you walked in, then it's haram. Anyone could understand this from the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. Because if it had no impact, being in menses or not, he would have said, so, being in menses, come in the masjid, there's no problem. He said, handing it is permissible, but walking in is not. This is what the scholars understood from this authentic hadith, and Allah knows best. So even if your Quran classes are held in the masjid, in the same buildings of the masjid, you cannot attend that. Mihwish says, for those traveling by plane from America to Pakistan, it will be night most of the flight. On the way back, it will be day throughout the whole flight. The flight will be about 14 hours, and I'll ask the crew to wake me up for Fajr. However, does this mean for about 14 hours I don't pray anything? Well, to my knowledge, Mehwish, when you are flying eastwards, eastbound, you are chasing the sun and you're racing with the sun. So you will see time flying like crazy. So if you depart before sunrise, before Fajr, by the mid of your journey, or by the 2/3 of your journey, sun would set. The whole day would elapse while you are on the plane, if you're going eastbound. Which means that you have to follow the position of the sun to know when to pray your Fajr, meaning that you look from the window. The moment you see that the dawn has broken, the break of dawn, then you have to pray Fajr before the sun rises. And just before the sun sets, you can pray Dhuhr and Asr combined, 2 rak'ah, 2 rak'ah. And once the sun sets, you can pray Maghrib 3 rak'ahs and Isha 2 rak'ahs. And then whenever you land, there's no problem. If you're going the opposite direction, and that is westbound, this means that you are going against the sun, which means that the time seems to be standstill. For example, I travel from Kuala Lumpur to Jeddah in Saudi Arabia. My flight usually takes off at 12 noon, which is the Dhuhr time. And I reach Jeddah approximately, if I'm not mistaken, by 2 or 3 o'clock So this means that as if my flight took 8 hours, yet the time elapsing was maybe 2 or 3 hours due to the time of difference between the regions, which is 5 hours, etc. So when you're traveling westbound, the sun seems to be stationary, not moving, because you are traveling in the direction of the sun. And hence, you may not pray except Dhuhr and Asr when you arrive. And you may not even pray that. So there's no problem. What counts when you're traveling by an airplane is the position of the sun to you in that plane. So the minute you see from your window that the sun has set, this is time for Maghrib for you. And the minute you see that the break of dawn is clear between the white thread and the black thread, the time of Fajr for you has begun, and the time in between can be estimated as well. Dilwar says, we get interest money from our bank account. Can we use this interest money to pay off our taxes, since paying taxes is not from Islam? The answer is no. It is prohibited for you to take interest money in the first place. Hypothetically, assuming that you are in a country that forces you to take interest money, and there's no bank account that is free from interest money. In this case, you are allowed to take this interest money with the intention of giving it to poor people as a form of cleansing your wealth, not as a form of getting closer to Allah. Now, failing to do this and taking the interest money to pay off your taxes would be committing a sin of benefiting from the haram riba money that you've received from the bank. Sanjida says, can a woman give zakat to her poor husband, and the husband would utilize this money to spend on her, on the household expenses and on the children? The answer is yes. The hadith of Fatima, the wife of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with her, she came and asked the Prophet ﷺ that her husband, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, is poor. So he classifies for being given zakat, let alone charity. So she said, can I give my zakat money to him? And the Prophet said, yes, ﷺ, knowing that he would take the money and he would provide for his family, including his wife. There's nothing wrong in that. He received the zakat money as a legitimate recipient of it, and now he possesses it. Whatever he gives to his wife, it's not her taking back her zakat money, rather it's her taking her lawful provision from her husband, and Allah knows best. Munira says, can a wife call her husband brother, daddy, etc.? And can a husband call his wife mom, sister, etc.? Will this affect their marriage? The answer is no. This would not affect their marriage, but Umar ibn Khattab, for example, used to dislike this. May Allah be pleased with him. And he disliked it because it may lead later on to dhihar, or to make this woman prohibited for him. Not that it is a way of prohibiting her upon him. So there's no problem in using that word, and if one avoids it, that might be much better. Fuad says, is it permissible to study and practice law in a non-Muslim country? The laws that you study in university are all man-made laws. And we know that in Islam, only Sharia law is valid and halal. And any man-made law is prohibited and a major sin. But in practicality, if a person is living in the West, and this is something that he can study, and inevitably Muslims would need to use it because they live in the West. They need to go to courts. They need someone to represent them and fight for their rights or defend them from any accusations that are not real. And you can't do this without a lawyer. So if a person studies law in order to defend what is right in accordance to Islamic law, I believe that this is permissible and it's halal. So if you know that a Muslim needs to get his rights from a partner who took his money, who cheated him, and he needs you to represent him, and you see that the case is legit and that he has all the rights and he's the oppressed, there's nothing wrong, inshallah, in defending him and calling for his rights, providing that you do not exceed the limit. So for example, if there are damages, some damages are ridiculous. So yes, I have been cheated by my partner, and my partner took $100,000 from me. I've got the documents, the lawyer goes to court, and it's proven. The judge gives me my $100,000 back. But my lawyer says we need also $1 million in compensation for damages. This is haram. So the lawyer is not allowed to go out of the Sharia law after securing his right, the 100,000. The $1 million is not his right, because this is taking people's money without any legitimate reason, and Allah knows best. Sahil says, please tell me how Islam defines sleep paralysis and how can we treat it? Sleep paralysis, people say that it can be attributed to nightmares, or what they call al-jathum. And al-jathum is something that makes it hard for you to breathe, and it collapses your chest, and you feel paralyzed. You can't speak, you can't shout, you can't move, and most likely this is a nightmare. You think that you're awake and you want to move, but you are unable because you're still asleep. Others, and this can be due to things that you had eaten, the wrong diet or whatever. And some say that this can be attributed to jinn possession. Either way, if this happens, you should maintain your adhkar, which is your antivirus, keeps you protected. You have to maintain your adhkar in the morning, in the evening, after fard prayers, before going to bed, and before leaving your house. And you will be 24/7 protected. You have to do ruqya. If you are facing this and this is continuous, make ruqya on water, blow on it, drink from it, wash your face with it, multiple times during the day and night, and inshallah, you will not find this afterwards. This is all the time we have. Until we meet next time, I leave you fi amanillah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.